Okay, let's just start recording. Hello.
I see you when I want to say Salim.
Salim, I see you too. You know, I just had to think about, there was a meme going around about, I think it was a movie film about Kazakhs in Altai, where my grandparents are also from. But they were talking about how, well, it was this meme, right? And it was like, I love you in Kazakh is Seni жақсы көрем.
Yeah.
Which is, I see you well.
And yes, I see you well. And welcome to our first podcast, finally. So, hi. Today we are giving a try to the first pilot episode of
Our Nomadic Lives.
Our Nomadic Lives. This nomadic life happening here in Berlin. Yes. And I'm Mirey.
I'm Özgecan, or Özge.
And a short intro of us.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Özge, and I was born and raised in Munich, in Germany, to Kazakh parents who themselves were partly born in Turkey, partly in Pakistan, and are the children of Kazakh nomads from the Altai region in China who went through a huge traumatic migration out of their homeland in their 1930s. And the question of identity and history has followed me for my entire life, really. I grew up in a time when we didn't have the internet yet. At the time when I was growing up, I didn't have any information on my heritage. I had a complete cultural disconnect through language, through history, through books. And so I spent my entire career now studying Kazakh history, Kazakh nationhood, Kazakh language, living there, going there, consuming all sorts of Kazakh pop culture, and writing a novel about this history that we carry. So that's me right now. And I'm also a poet. And I live in Berlin now with my two children, my husband, and I met Mirey, Can dostum.
Yeah, and I was fascinated when we met first that I can use actually my own language, the Kazakh language, Salim, and meet someone from abroad, but who is so close to me on a different level. And yes, I'm again having my all the way goosebumps. But that first meeting, seeing you, Seni koru, is forever, I think, in my body and in my mind and my heart. And I'm Mirey. I am from Almaty, from Kazakhstan. I'm living here in Berlin now this is our fourth summer. We came here with a family of 3 kids, me and my husband, and the journey of rediscovering myself, I guess, through this experience of migration, looking again at my culture, the language, I think pretty much every aspect of me was questioned on a deep, deep level. And I have graduated and finished my master's in psychology. I'm a psychologist and I'm artist, a dancing artist, I call myself. I guess I'm a dreamer, also a Kazakh girl who was raised in post-Soviet Kazakhstan. Interestingly, I think even if I grew up in Kazakhstan, seeing you and seeing the community, Kazakh community here, I think there is this unique difference to values and heritage that I wasn't exposed to as much Kazakhnas, even living in Kazakhstan, as I started now looking, searching, reading, and trying to understand why and how it all works. Mm-hmm. And I'm here today with Özge. Every couple of months, we meet and we talk about all these things that happen in our nomadic lives and how this life here is for me and how it's going for you. Are you used to all of that, or is it normal, or is it not? So, yeah, that's how this idea was born, and we are here today.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, me too. Maybe I should have mentioned also my background, my education background. I did a PhD in sociology, in historical sociology in Ireland, which I find has some similarities in its history of colonialization and loss of language to a certain extent, to a different extent than in Kazakhstan, which was fascinating to kind of see the parallels. But yeah, my topic thesis, I think, has become really popular now in Kazakhstan, which was the Alash movement, sort of the first intellectual movement calling for a form of national liberation from Russian imperialism in the early 20th century. And it makes me so happy to see like different pop culture iterations of this history, to see more young people interested, because it is a history that was almost wiped out by Soviet forces. Of course, it wasn't in their interest or in their agenda. And just in general, I think we have a huge love for Kazakh pop culture. And I think our journey here is really to examine what is coming out of there, but also seeing how it relates to our own disciplines.
And I think how it happened so
Mhm.
that it's two of us, like from different environments, but with the same roots. And we both speak Kazakh,
Yes.
even if we didn't go to Kazakh schools. And I feel and I see from our like friends, both back home in Kazakhstan and here, that this Soviet time touched many families differently. Not everyone has this relationship to the language, and then topic of language is not only about the language itself. It feels like there's more to that. So for today, let's just explore and talk about how the language, how the language came to survive and be important for us. So in your case, I was just shocked.
Okay.
Even if there was no internet, there were no clearly kindergarten schools and everything, but only through the family, you saved the language. Who was the source of the language? Yes. How do you know it? To which level now? How do you feel?
I think, on a daily basis, I can get by with my Kazakh. When it comes to talking about more, academic or literary things, I start struggling there a bit because of the lack of schooling I had in Kazakh. But at the same time, I love Kazakh literature. I love also translating Kazakh literature as far as I can, as far as I understand it. And also, again, I translated the Kazakh short stories of Rahimjan Otorbayev into German. And that happened a couple of years ago. But even then, it was really difficult to find certain dictionaries, to find certain words, especially because he's from West Kazakhstan. And they have certain words that they use differently there. But my love of the language, or my knowledge of the language, first and foremost came through our elders, through our grandparents. It was very common going in Turkey, because that is where they settled in the end, from China over into India, Pakistan, where they lived for 12 years. And then in the 1950s,
and
they settled
you are third generation then?
I am. My grandparents migrated. So does that make me third generation?
Yes, I think they are the first, and your parents, they were born in Turkey and Pakistan, and then you were born already in Europe.
Exactly. So that's third generation. And so the first generation, that would be the grandparents. And when we were in the Kazakh neighborhoods in Küçükçekmece or Zeytinburnu in Istanbul, like elders would just stop us on the street and be like, "Sen kimnin balasın? Whose child are you? Qayersin? What is your tribe?" And most of the time, because the elders spoke to us in Kazakh, we answered in Turkish. And there's this theory, I don't know who by, I must look it up, but that says, communities who grow up in host countries where the language is similar to the community's language, they're much faster to forget the language or adopt the new language. And that was unfortunately the case with us, that, we took on Turkish very, very fast. Kazakh and Turkish, both Turkic languages, obviously. And it was easy for us to speak Turkish to our elders, and they would respond to us in Kazakh. But we heard the language. We grew up hearing it spoken on the streets by our parents to our grandparents. And not only that, but I grew up in a household with bookshelves lined with Kazakh books. Like my father, he has first editions, second editions of, Abay, writings by Ali Khan Bakir and, Marjan Jumabay.
And how did he get them? Like those books, they were brought all the way through the journey, like carried on, or?
No. They were acquired later. Very little was brought along on the journey, but my father worked for Radio Liberty, I think. Azatlık Radyosu, yeah. So I think they had more access through their work and interest in collecting these books. And he went to Kazakhstan as soon as the wall fell. So he would come home with suitcases of books.
So it's almost 90s.
Yeah,
Okay.
90s. And of course, I would see these books and I would know there was some sort of secret lying within them about who I was, right? I mean, at a very young age, I was very interested in learning Cyrillic, and I learned it. I forgot it. I learned it again. You know, it was like on and off.
And those books,
Yes.
they were brought there in Cyrillic,
Yes.
which you didn't know.
No.
And then, but your dad, he learned.
Yeah, he taught me.
But the grandparents who left Kazakhstan, they used...
See, they left China, right? And of course, being nomadic at the time, most of them weren't literate, so they weren't reading or writing. I mean, you always had someone in the aul who was sort of the person, the correspondence person. And also in the Altai region, Arabic script is used, right? Which, you know, from Ahmed Baitursun, who had invented the sort of Arabic script, which is still being used in Mongolia and in Altai region. But yeah, so we were like adopting to these different scripts together with history, I guess, to gain this access. But like it's difficult. Like Kazakh literature is, you know, it's heavy, right? Like especially the classics. So one day between all those books, I found this book, and it's a German translation of Abai. Translated in the DDR, like in East Germany. And this was between my dad's books. And I started reading it, and I was just completely obsessed and enamored and loved it. And I always thought it was the word Borsak that I found first, but it was actually the word Shashu, which I found here. And I couldn't believe that the word Shashu was somewhere in a book somewhere, you know, because Shashu, it was like something that we did in the community, right? It wasn't something that you saw in a book. That's how closed off I was from the culture and the language, that to me, it was a miracle to see something of my community represented in a book. Long story short, I always had an interest for the language, but then I also, as soon as I could, I went to Kazakhstan and I lived there for almost a year and learned some Russian along the way.
Of course. That's actually like a long story, because you needed that for your studies, right?
Yes, I did need the Russian for my studies. So I was doing intensive Russian classes as well as intensive Kazakh classes I was looking for. It's not easy. It wasn't easy. This was 2011, 2012. So I was having one-on-one sessions with one lady, I forget her name, who kind of taught me. But mainly I learned from my colleagues who were all Kazakh speakers. I was working at the university, Eurasian National University at the time, and they knew Turkish. So it was perfect, because I would be like, how do you say this in Kazakh? How do you say that in Kazakh? And
translating from Turkish.
And they would help me figure out a lot of things. And then also I was staying in the student housing, like in the teacher's unit, but I was hanging out with lots of students and speaking to them in Kazakh, and it was lovely. It was some of the best moments of my life going back.
But then do you think it helped you a lot that you came already knowing some Russian? What was your impression of the language usage in Kazakhstan? It was what year?
This was 2000. Oh, did I say 2011, 2012? So Russian was still being spoken a lot. Also, I had been in Almaty for a while, and later on, I also went for field work to Kazakhstan again, 2014 to Almaty. And sometimes it was tough, because like if I didn't know that much Russian, so, people would speak to me and they would use like half of the phrase would be in Russian, and I'd be like, I don't know what you're saying. Like, can you please like explain it in Kazakh? I remember I went into a bank. This was 2011, and to exchange money, right? And then I was just standing there, and they were just saying loads of stuff, and I was like, what's going on? Like, nibub jatr, in Kazakh, and they were like, очередь бар. And I was like, what is an очередь? And it turned out, yes, there's a queue, and you have to ask. So, like, obviously, like, everything is culture, right? Everything has its own culture. In Germany, when you go to stand in a queue, you just stand in a queue. In Kazakhstan, you ask who's the last person in the queue, and then you know when it's your turn.
Everything is about communication,
Yeah.
connection. There's always someone in your space or someone wanting to enter your space.
Yeah, like you have to always be in community. Also, like the bus, right? Like I was so shy at the beginning because I was like, there are no like bus tables where it says exactly which stops where it goes. No, you have to like ask the person, does this bus go there? And then you either get on the bus or you don't. And it really,
it's so interesting. Even I'm just realizing now that really life there, to know something, to clarify something, you have to ask someone. You have to go for connection. Here, mostly everything is made for you. Like you have to read, you have to know the German, a little bit of German to understand where, when, and how you get, and try not to interrupt or bother.
Yeah, bother anyone. Do not bother. Do not get into anyone's personal space, right? Whereas there, like if you want to get anything done, you have to communicate. You have to interact with people. And that was really, really hard for me actually at the beginning. But it opened me up in so many ways that like I'm really grateful for that experience now. It was something.
Yeah, that's true. It's not only the language, it's actually not only the language. It's the way how the mentality is here and over there, really so different.
It's, it's the individualistic versus sort of the collective that is still kind of there in Kazakhstan, but I think it's starting to move towards a more individualistic society, which is, the result of capitalism.
Yes. Big cities are turning towards the individualistic height.
But that's the long story of how I got to learn Kazakh, and also through my studies, obviously, reading the works of Ahmet Baytursun, Alihan Bukirhan, Marjan Jumabai, Mirshak Abdullah, and all of them for my PhD thesis, which was
that's amazing,
eye-opening.
And it's also really shame to say that I think the importance of all of that wasn't emphasized enough. Where like you just, when you are living in there, I guess it was this post-colonial, post-Soviet, you try not to be, if you're really paying too much attention towards your Kazakhness, then that can be called nationalistic, or like why are you and I feel that, and now that after conducting also my research here, studying me and other like Central Asian migrants' experiences, that the small communities, diasporas, really have the unique nature of you are sticking to something that you don't have here, and these values that are...
Yeah, but I also think it's a sort of survival mechanism, right? Like you go to a different country, in Turkey as well, yes, we were very much accepted. We got a citizenship, and, the government helped a lot. And very, very many Kazakhs, accept Turkey as their homeland, and, they don't want to go anywhere else, which is beautiful. At the same time, there's still racism. You walk down a street, people are like, hey, Japanese, like, what are you doing here? And you turn around and speak to them in perfect Turkish. So they're like, oh, like, when did you learn Turkish? So there's that. But also there's, of course, you come into a new country, and you need that community to be able to find your way, to be able to figure out what to do, where to go, all of this. And of course, there are certain things like the culture kind of gets frozen in time, right? Which is very common. We sing like really old songs nobody cares about in Kazakhstan anymore. For us it's like, oh, and in Kazakhstan they're like, oh my God. But also maybe some older traditions that are just not useful anymore. Yeah, I think and also like the context of growing up in Germany. Germany is not very hospitable towards its migrants, right? Like Germany, it's a very me, you, we're different, categorizing everyone kind of society. So it doesn't make it easy to kind of blend in. I think the way the US or, Canada kind of make it. So I think it all depends on the context of where you land in a way. And so then when you're not being accepted by sort of the majority culture, you turn back home.
Interesting. So you think if you were, but how is the situation for Turkish community who stayed in Turkey? And then, as we mentioned, the language is a little bit more similar. The cultures are they more acceptable? And is it easier to blend in?
I think so. I think it is easier to blend in. But also, I think the fact that we have a very traumatic migration behind us, it took longer to blend in. I do think it's a trauma collective. And because of that, there was more sort of sticking together, not marrying outside of the community. To this day, like the majority, I think, will marry within the community. And it's more acceptable now to marry outside of the community. But for a very, very long time, it wasn't. For a very long time. And I think it's got to do with the fact that so much was lost along the way that people, humans being humans, like kind of clung on to whatever was left over.
And it's really fascinating how, despite the fact that all that happened, the culture, the language is preserved. But then I had a question, but I think it's the big one that we will be trying answering in the future, but also blending in. Is that a goal? Like now there are so many migrants, nomads, digital nomads. Like the world is huge and people have many opportunities. But then what do you think, how important is the culture?
Preservation of the culture.
Preservation, and to which extent? And as a person who lived in a Western community, what would be easier if you just could blend in?
I mean, I think what the culture that needs to be preserved, I think the aspects of which need to be preserved are the ones that are useful to you, like that are beautiful to you. I do think there are certain aspects of our culture that are not that nice, you know, and you kind of come face to face with it when you get married as a woman, right? And I think what I believe in, like, you know, if you have access to so many cultures, to make a beautiful blend of it that is beautiful to you and that is valuable. I think there's a lot to be learned from German culture too. And to kind of find a middle way with which you can be at peace. I think when I was younger, I used to want to find sort of a pure form of identity for myself. I used to want to be just Kazakh or just Turkish or I mean, I couldn't though. I just couldn't. It's impossible. But I think at some point I was like, I can just be all of it and I can just be me and have all of these parts of me. And it's nice. Like, it's really nice. You know, when I go to Turkey, I can, you know, put on my Turkish and I'm like, hey guys, like, don't try to fool me like a tourist. I'm not paying that much money for a scoop of ice cream. Like, give me the normal local prices, please. And I think maybe it's a personal decision. That's what I'm trying to come towards. Is I think it's a personal decision. I don't believe in telling people how to live their lives or what they should believe in. But for me, the migration was so moving. And I felt the pain of it in my grandparents, and I felt the pain of it in my parents, and I still feel the pain of it in myself. Now, I don't want to pass that pain on to my children. I think it's also a reason why I had to write this book and kind of externalize that pain and put it aside and be like, I'm kind of done. I'm never going to be done with it, but part of it is done now. And I know I met up with a friend a while ago, and she said to me, and it was so interesting because we grew up together in Munich, and she said to me, she was like, Özge, are you done with it now? Like, I know this whole identity thing was so big on you, weighed so much on you. And she's also Kazakh, but like, we're from the same community. She's like, are you at peace now? And I was like, for now, yeah, I am. I'm at peace for now. I just had to externalize all of what happened, put it in a book. And maybe for now, I can be at peace.
Or is it the beginning of another bigger journey? The book, by the way, was coming when?
I don't know when it's coming still. It's with my agent. I have an agent.
Okay. We're going to be talking about soon, yeah?
Yes, I hope so.
I'm also looking forward to seeing it. About this book, I'm fascinated. I'm holding it still because it's year 1949. Oh my God.
Right? The only critique I have with these translations is they're all translated out of Russian. Like Kazakh, direct Kazakh to German, direct Kazakh to English translations are pretty new. So,
and you know, like what word is actually coming. Yeah, the way how I speak Kazakh, it's also
yes.
huge.
Tell me.
Like you told me
Mhm.
that, and I was discussing how we say this happy birthday to you, туған күнің мен,
Mhm.
which is translated from Russian.
Mhm.
And if we translate it directly, it's like, with your birthday.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you told me that we don't say it that way. That's why. And you understand that because you know Russian and you know
the translation
yes.
that's happening there, but also I know Turkish, and I told you, in Turkish we would say doğum gün kutlu olsun, tuğan gün kutlu
Yeah.
olsun. And the Russian is because you're congratulating
Yeah.
with
Yes.
your birthday, right?
It definitely became more aware of my Kazakh when I'm talking now, using it anywhere, but also especially with you. So yeah, it's an interesting journey of self-rediscovery.
Also, tell me about how your journey with Kazakh was. You grew up in a Kazakh-speaking household, right?
Yes, I think it's all because of the household, the family, because I grew up in Almaty, which was capital after Soviet just collapsed. And then I grew up going to Russian kindergarten, then Russian school. I know that there was a fight between my parents before giving me to school, this decision about whether I should go to English school or English. Later, I went to English university.
Nowadays, you can go to English school, I think, in Kazakhstan.
You definitely can. But back then it was this Russian or Kazakh, and then the trauma of the Soviet youth. My parents did it work, and then my mom won because she was like, okay, she's going to grow up and live in this city, in this country, and to be somebody here, you have to know good Russian. Mm-hmm. And Kazakh, she's gonna know anyways. Then my dad wanted me to go to Kazakh school, but then so I went all the way Russian education.
Also, university?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Is there actually, was there Kazakh language university education when you were growing up?
Every university, every faculty and major had Russian groups and Kazakh language groups. Okay. So, for instance, in my case, we were 4 Russian-speaking groups and then 2 were Kazakh groups.
In university?
In university, in my department. Right. So, I'm growing up all learning about the world through the Russian language, Russian literature and everything. And then my exposure to Kazakh language and even not just the exposure, but demand for me to use Kazakh language came from my dad mostly. And you know how it's really, you have this energy of adolescence when you want to be cool. And then the cool was the Russian language and all my friends speak the language. And I come home and I'm like, okay, and I continue speaking Russian, this was like that, and give me that. And my dad speak to me in Kazakh, please. And then I am so grateful to his
insistence,
patience. Oh. I'm remembering German word. Okay, I'm learning
very
German.
The integration is working.
It's so on its way. Patience. He had patience, requested, punished, or something else. He just would again and again ask, can you please speak Kazakh? Speak Kazakh. Oh. And then my mom let me be all the way cool as I wanted, and she would understand me in Russian and pop music, the TV, and interestingly, the Kazakh literature. We had 1 hour or 2 hours. 1 hour, I think, per week of that, and then I would learn it in Russian language. So.
You read
yes.
in Russian?
In Russian. I couldn't. When I grew up and in my high school, I gave it a try. I had the Bajol in Kazakh and I opened and tried starting reading it in Kazakh. It's so not easy.
Yes.
I would I don't know this language at all. Oh my God. And then, so I think that day is still coming for me to be able to read it all the way in Kazakh. But I learned my culture through the lens of Russian language and the literature. And then you don't question that while growing up in Almaty, I think, because the environment, the community understands you in Russian language. And then it's after when I moved here that I felt that, there are Kazakh people, and then I started to could be this the major language, like dominant language, and then the foreign languages. Back home, I was growing up, and I think no one would really require the knowledge of Kazakh as the national language. Both are working. So I studied in Russian, and then only for my master's, I moved and then studied in English. So language question wasn't like my identity. I think the Russian language didn't interrupt or it. And now I realize it became part of me. It's like this big question of.
Do you mean the Russian language became part of you?
Yes, I think just like we start talking in Kazakh, and we are one way, but then when conversation is like getting hot, we quickly switch to English, and then same thing with Russian. I think my emotional language first was developed in Russian, and many words, unfortunately, I don't know, and I didn't know. I'm learning it now with my kids growing up. When I want to tell them and help them understand what is it that they are feeling, going through, etc., then I look up the word. And yes, so I come here. Well, I had my first baby before we moved here, and back then we were living still in Canada, and we had this agreement just that with my husband that the kid should know his language, and Kazakh should be his, like he should learn it from home. And then we agreed that I'm speaking only Kazakh to the child, and that was the way. When we lived in Kazakhstan, from the community, kids would learn Russian. And it's then when we came here, and we continued that, speaking in Kazakh and in English, and then German came, and Russian language somehow disappeared from the household because we back in Astana where we lived, it was all over the city. And it's when I went back home last summer, I realized that our kids are like foreigners with their relatives.
I know that feeling.
Yes, and they're like, okay, I know that language, but I know the Kazakh, but I can't really use it with kids to play. Yes, I think this language situation in the household is so challenging for us in a way, but also it's every language gives so much. It helps you to explore yourself, opens up in many different ways. I think it's good to know. But then the thing, if we should force kids to like this one, you should know better, they need to learn the language of the school, and home we give different languages. And that's why I was fascinated. We met first at the meeting of Kazakh community here. And for me,
which, by the way, is where like we were encouraging our children to speak Kazakh, right? Like it was a Kazakh language kids group where we met.
Yes. And then your personal story was so inspiring that despite the fact that you grew up far from the community and everything, you still you knew the language, and that gave me lots of hope. Yes, and then here, the moment about duality that I feel, I asked you. So I tried to speak Kazakh with you, but then my Kazakh language has so many Russian words.
I find that it was still okay. Like I've had worse, yes.
but I do my best. I try, see? And then when I've heard this interview, I told you about this Kazakh community from Iran, the girl visiting Kazakhstan. And when she felt that I know Kazakh from my parents, I come to my Atamiken, like the homeland. And then I can't get along without Russian. And I, as a representative of Kazakhs from the community in Kazakhstan, I felt so sorry for, like, I know it. And it's part of me too. And how is it for you? Like, how do you understand my Russian words? Уже так, and
yeah. I understand them. I mean, the funny thing is, like, my husband doesn't speak Russian, right? He never studied it. But he grew up speaking Kazakh at home because his family are from Afghanistan. So they're Afghan Kazakhs. And they preserved the language because Farsi or Dari is completely different to Kazakh. So they never adopted the language as a home language, as a family language. And he has lots of relatives in Kazakhstan who went back as Oralman, and they obviously adopted the Уже, Prosta and all this stuff, right? And even he gets it now, So like, it's almost become like part of the Kazakh language,
Yes.
And I don't mind that. Like, it's very little, It's like saying I speak Turkish and I say okay. It's not that big a deal. But what is an issue is when non-Russian speakers, which they exist, and this was something I came across so many times in the early days in the early 2000s when I would go to Kazakhstan, is people just wouldn't believe me that I didn't speak Russian. They were like, how is it that you speak Kazakh but you don't speak Russian? Like it was news to them that you could speak Kazakh and not Russian. I know that, they obviously know that there are owls and, people don't speak Russian there, but just to be sort of a cosmopolitan, quote unquote, person and not to speak Russian was mind blowing. But I think there's more acceptance towards that now. I mean, there's one incident with my mom that I will never forget. She went to the supermarket. This was 2014 in Almaty. She was buying something, and then she asked the cashier, like, how much is it? And they responded in Russian, and she's like, Kazakh. And then another woman standing there got really offended because I think she thought she was making a political point, which, she just didn't understand the cashier. And she was like, why don't you speak Russian? Why don't you speak Russian? And started yelling at my mother, who had no clue what was going on and just wanted to know exactly how much money she had to pay. So these incidents have happened. And the issue I have is when genuinely people don't speak Russian, they don't understand the Russian, and people start speaking Kazakh, but then end the sentence in Russian, and they're like, what just happened? I'm not blaming anyone here, right? It's history, it's fate. It's, what it is, as the young people say. But it did it moved me in a way when my father, who is, he has such a high command of Kazakh. He's read all this stuff in original Kazakh. He can read Tutijazu, he can read the Arabic script, he can read the Cyrillic, he can read all sorts of Kazakh, and he knows exactly what every single word means. That when he goes to Kazakhstan, I have to sometimes become an interpreter for the half Russian that is spoken when we're trying to buy a train ticket or something like that, So it's unfortunate, And I also do not, want to shame or blame people who genuinely don't speak Kazakh. But I do think an effort can be made to learn at least the very basics of the language, to communicate with people who don't speak Russian.
Wrapping up this question about the language, I think we should talk about our senses of we touched upon the identity, and then we have many sides to ourselves. But then what is the role of this Kazakh self, related to the person who uses and knows and understands the language? And do you think it plays a role?
No, I was just thinking about the question is like, why are we even bringing this point up of using Kazakh, of knowing Kazakh? And for me, I think there's this saying in Turkish, which I think exists in many other languages as these sayings go, but it's like one language is one person and two languages are two people, right? And language is also not only culture, but it's psychology. I mean, this has been also studied by, among others, I think it was Bourdieu, that, speaking a certain language changes the way you act and the way you behave through the language. And I think for me, the reason why I wanted to learn the language and the reason why I want my children to know the language is because I want them to have access to that way of being. Because it's, like I said, it has beautiful sides to it,
Absolutely.
Beautiful sides. The konakjayluk, right? Like the generosity, the community, the, tilek, right? Like wishing well for others, things for which I don't think there are words or concepts in the European languages we speak. In Kazakh, there are shortcuts to those concepts and ways of being.
Absolutely. I agree on this point. And also I think as a person who grew up in this post-Soviet, post-colonial community, after coming here, I realized that back there, we were so multicultural, and we really grew up being tolerant to there is this common shared, but also the ethnical part of you, the heritage, is also emphasized in a different way. And I think my understanding of the language and then this rich humor that comes with it helped me to understand like elders and the world because some phrases are absolutely not translatable. And I think we are very like body oriented. Like there's so much about you can say through how you are feeling it and how and what's going on. And then the other person only when you know the context, you will understand. And language really, how is it? It saves. It's like this treasure box of the story, telling us a lot about our ancestors, that how and why they felt the world that way, how they were connected to themselves and to the nature.
Yes.
And all the respect that is growing from that foundation, I think, person can easily understand only in Kazakh language.
This indigenous wisdom almost, this nomadic wisdom, right?
Everything that's in us, this desire for, and then I think lately our neighbors said about my daughter, they had kind angst. She has no fear from these small cockroaches. And then I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And then she's like catching all of them. So this part of us being so brave and maybe resilient to some incredible extent, I'm fascinated by all of the like migrants, modern and then second and third generation who are making it all. It's not easy. And to understand yourself, your nature, the language really opens a door, like a wide door of, okay, here. And I guess I want my kids to have access to that part of culture too. And it's work.
It's work. For sure. It's labor.
Especially when, as parents in this, they're learning Latin alphabet, then they are exposed to, German and English, and then Kazakh, even if they speak, for them to be able to read and to then communicate, it's different alphabet.
Yeah. But I don't think that's a big deal. Like, honestly, because I know like there are a lot of parents who are concerned with their kids reading in Cyrillic really early on.
As a kid who grew up in this community.
As a kid who grew up here in Germany, like it's not that difficult to learn Cyrillic, really.
You learned it on your own later.
Yeah, my dad gave me a table of like, you know, this is L in Cyrillic, this is P in Cyrillic, and you know, and then it's like putting a puzzle together. But maybe that's just because I'm so obsessive with things. So maybe that's just me. But I don't think it's a big block to accessing the written language.
It depends on person. It's like this language and culture. I think it's something inherited, yes. But then if it's not inherited, as in cases of many of us, we are learning the cultures and customs by living them, by coming to them and questioning why it's happening that way. I think it's something to explore on your own. And then to actually become to know it when you read and research about it. I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah, I think like if you're not given that access, I think if you want your children to have that access and you're not giving it to them directly, is instilling a sense of curiosity about it in your children, right? Showing them what you can, the beautiful sides of it, and being like, this is also part of who you are. And if you want to learn more about it, then here's a table of Cyrillic letters.
And please make an effort to understand. And now you have even more gadgets and help.
Exactly.
Okay. It's a big one. I think like we just opened up a little bit of the language question. And then here we are making the podcast in English.
In English, I know. Like maybe we need to address that fact.
Yes. Why in English?
Why in English? I mean, you've touched upon it before,
Yes.
that whenever we start talking about deeper topics, we switch to English because we've both been educated in English. I write in English as well, and it's sort of been my first emotional language as well, growing up. But despair not, we do have plans on making an episode or two in Kazakh. It won't be as eloquent on my part. I mean, Mirey, I think she's wonderful in Kazakh, but I'll be stumbling a bit.
Yes, we definitely should make an episode or two, and maybe, or we will see how it goes, and maybe a whole season, but I just had the thought that I am making it in English with you because you don't know Russian.
Well, there you go. The perks of not knowing Russian. I do know some Russian. I just don't speak it.
Yes. So this common language for us to be at some similar level emotionally is English.
Is English. Yes.
And I think in Kazakh we can discuss really this humor and fun aspects of our culture. Oh my God. I love the idea about the kemperlerge and kemperler жайлы. I think we can...
which one?
In the nose. Келін, the topic of келін, ене, ayel, yer. I think it's our personal, but also not personal.
Yeah, it's a whole community thing, right?
And maybe we can make an episode on that in Kazakh.
Yes.
But anyways, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so lovely.
Yes.
First episode done.
It's how it is, how we talk and discussing everything from one thing to another, and
going in circles.
This thing, I think it's interesting to be shared, and please give us some feedback and write comments on what you would prefer to hear about, ideas on our nomadic life.
Yeah, and if you disagree with anything or think otherwise, we're always open to learning new viewpoints, new perspectives. Would love to hear about your experiences.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mirey. Bye. Audio and post-production by me, Özgecan.
All visuals prepared by me, Mirey.
Theme track by Dash.
This podcast was filmed and recorded in our home studio.